Okay, now we're going to do chapter 15. Jonas goes into the annex room and he realizes that the giver is in a lot of pain, and he suggests maybe he should come back tomorrow, but the giver says, no, take some of the pain. So he wants Jonas to remove his painful memories from him. This pain is really, really very disturbing indeed. He is somewhere where there's a lot of people groaning and horses injured, and it's complete chaos. And obviously, we know as readers that this must be war. There's somebody. He's lying on the ground and he's injured, and there's a boy next to him who's very severely injured, and he's begging him for water. And there's sort of blood coming everywhere, and Jonas gives him water, and then the boy dies. Okay, so this is Jonas's first experience with death. Right? He doesn't know death at all in the giver, right? So think the scene is just really disturbing, with people crying in pain and people begging for water and begging for their mother, and horses lying on the ground. And he continues to lie there, hearing the cannons go off, and he's in pain himself, and he hears people dying, and he hears people begging for their mother. And the giver feels really, really bad about giving him this memory. The giver looked away as if he could not bear to see what he had done. Forgive me, he said. And now we're moving on to chapter 16, because that was a very short chapter. Jonas really doesn't want to go back. He just doesn't. He's decided that this is really an awful job that he's been given, and he says he wants his childhood again. He wants his scraped knees and ball games. And this is the thing about growing up, is that once you experience things, and once you learn things, you actually can't go back. And this is what's happened with Jonas. Once he's seen this pain and horrid things that have happened in the world, there's nothing he can do about it. And so the giver is giving him nicer memories after this awful memory of war, and he gives him the memory of a birthday party, and he now understood the joy of being an individual, special and unique and proud. Okay. And now he's gone to museums and he's seen paintings, and he knows all the colours and he recognises them and can name them. Then he's given him a memory of camping and being out in the open and sitting by the campfire. And then the giver gives him his favourite memory. This is a very important memory, because this makes Jonas realise how his community is so different to the way things used to be. He is in a room with people, and it's obviously Christmas time, because we've got packages on the floor, and we've got things decorated with lights in the room, and there's people unwrapping their presents, and they're all hugging each other, and they're all happy. And the crazy thing that he sees that he's totally not familiar with is that there are old people there, because for him, old people are in the house of the old. They don't go anywhere else. And he says, well, what are these old people doing there? And the giver says they're called grandparents. So in this scene, he understands what family really is. That his family unit, where they ask him every morning, what did you dream, Jonas, is not the same as sitting there around Christmas unwrapping presents and being with grandparents. And then Jonas and the giver have a whole discussion about grandparents, and about Jonas is very curious about it. He's saying, well, maybe I could find out who my real grandparents were. And he says, you can look in the Hall of Open Records. But Jonas reflects that he thinks that the system in his world it works very well. That they go off to live in the house of the old. But on the other hand, he feels that it would be very nice to have them around, even though what they have right now works. And then he says something which for the reader is very, very ironic, because it's something that's so important in our lives, and it's something that Jonas is not familiar with. He says, I certainly like the memory, though. I can see why it's your favourite. I couldn't get the word for the whole feeling of it. The feeling was so strong in the room. Love, the giver told him. Jonas repeated it. Love. It was a word and concept new to him. You see, if you live in a world which is without hate, then you live in a world which is without love, because those two strong emotions go together. Then Jonas wants to ask the giver another question. He's going to ask the giver if there's any way that he thinks it would be actually quite nice if the old lived with their families. And then he says, well, maybe actually, could you be my grandparent? And he says, he says the family in the memory seemed a little more, and he doesn't know the word, and the giver finishes it for a little more complete. Okay, feeling like you're part of a family makes you feel complete. And Jonas says he likes the feeling of love and he wishes that we still had it. But he understands that with the way things are organised, it was quite a dangerous way to live, that there was a risk involved. And then he starts talking about the fact that they had a fire in the room, like an open fire, and that obviously had to be dangerous. But he says, I did like the light they made and the warmth. Okay, so he comes home and he asks his parents a question, and their answer is very strange. He says to them, do you love me? And then they say, precision of language, please. And the mother says, your father means you used a very generalized word, so meaningless that it's become almost obsolete. Obsolete means we don't use it anymore, we don't have it anymore. And Jonas says, the meaningless? He thought that actually he'd never experienced anything more meaningful than love. And so they correct him and they say, do you enjoy that they enjoy him and that they take pride in his accomplishments? And they say, do you understand why it's inappropriate to use the word like love? Mother asked. Jonas nods and he says, yes, thank you, I do. He replied slowly. It was his first lie to his parents. Okay, so Jonas not only feels distanced from his friends and from his sister, but now he's feeling very distanced from his parents because there's something that he feels is missing between him and them. He understands better what a family unit should be. And also, I think for us as the reader, we understand that what seemed very nice about this calm family where they discuss everything and where everything's proper and correct and it's not chaotic and people aren't yelling and screaming at each other, actually what lies behind it is something quite sinister. To have parents that don't love you and they're not even your biological parents. I mean, who are these people? They're just making sure that you stick to the rules. That's what his parents do. They make sure that he does everything properly. If he has an inappropriate dream, they have to give him medicine. If he does this, they have to get punished. He has to get punished. So this is very, very. It's a very serious part of the book. And then we have Gabriel is sleeping very, very well in Jonas's room, and he's doing great. And obviously, nobody realizes it's because Jonas is giving him the memories. So his father says now that he slept, he could be officially named and given to his family in December, which was only 2 months away. But when he was taken away, he stopped sleeping again and cried in the night. So he goes back into Jonas's room, and they decided they've got to give him more time. And things look optimistic about Gabriel's future. And then Jonas kind of confides in Gabriel. He says to him, things could change, Gabe. Things could be different. I don't know how, but there must be some way for things to be different. There could be colours. And grandparents, he added, staring through the dimness towards the ceiling of his sleeping room. And everybody would have the memories. And he says, and then he laughs and he says, you know about what memories, because Gabriel has been given memories. And then he says something very, very touching. He says, there could be love, Jonas whispered. And now, for the first time, Jonas does not take his pill. So now we understand that Jonas has still continued to take pills for his stirrings, and he's decided that it is not time for him to take this pill anymore. Okay, which makes sense because he feels an emotion towards Fiona. He feels an attraction towards her, and that could be connected to love. And now he understands what love is. He wants to feel more.